folks here in Ahmedabad, in Bangalore, all over India, whoever is logged in. I can see a kind of a list here, but I'm not going to that. So good afternoon, and really happy to talk to you. I think after a long time, after quite a bit of a gap. Actually, I would prefer to stand up, but because of this WebEx camera, I think I have to be sitting here. So that's fine. That's good. It's good to be here after I've completed 1 year. Time flies. It doesn't feel like 1 year. It doesn't feel at all that so much time has gone by, but it completely time flies. So I can't claim to be new anymore. I'm very old. So you can bring me as much as you want, and you can basically, put me on the railway track at my junction and ride over there. Okay. So ये तो मैं किसी ने भी नहीं सोचा होगा ना, like even if you, I'm sure most of you would have seen Lage Rao Munna Bhai, and those two guys, Sanjay Dutt and this guy क्या नाम है? Circuit, but नाम क्या है? Arshad Ghaus. They're in the jail and they're imagining, note mein naam छिपा होगा, cities will be named after them. But even those powerful guys didn't think that a railway junction will be named after them. Okay, so now there's a Srini junction. That's like very, very powerful. Huh? Thanks to Divya. Okay, Srini junction, that's huge. So I'll have to live up to that. So good, thank you all. I just want to talk to you. I don't have a presentation. I have some points noted down that I want to share with you, and then I'll open up to questions. Okay? So Manoj, if you want me to wait for a minute, I can do that, or can I go ahead? Thumbs up, kar do. Okay. So I have a few topics I want to talk about in terms of what has happened in the last 1 year since I've joined from my perspective, right? And oftentimes what happens is that when you are speaking from your perspective, there may be other views that you are missing. So I would encourage all of you to be open, be frank. If I don't know something, I will be honest and tell you I don't know. Okay, but you shouldn't hesitate to ask me or show me another perspective that I may be missing. Okay, so that's one thing. I always believe that those days are gone when power rested in one center, and that center controlled everything, and that was possibly in the industrial era. I may have talked about this, but I believe in that strongly, and I believe in that strongly enough to mention it again and again so that you guys also understand it. Okay, so in the industrial era, power would be focused in one center point or maybe a core. Because information resided there, okay, and because information was available only to a few people, they had all the power. Those days are gone, and any organization, any CEO, any leadership team, any management person or a team leader, if they think that they can use information power to run their team and succeed, they'll be badly mistaken, and very soon they'll discover that they're actually failing. Okay. So we can't allow that misconception ever to come into us. In today's environment, work environment, power resides in expertise. Okay, and everyone sitting here is an expert in his or her own right. So you are all, power resides in all of you, right? It's there in you. Whether you are able to use it or not is entirely up to you. So I would encourage that all of you should use that power of expertise, because that's when synergy will happen, and that is when you will grow as an organization that can actually capitalize on all this synergistic power, and that's an amazing fuel for any organization. Okay, so please don't think otherwise. There may be times when we have to take quote unquote management decision or executive decision, but we can't fool ourselves thinking that we will take decision that all the time and every time it can be right. So oftentimes the guidance needs to come from you, the questioning needs to come from you, the challenge needs to come from you, so that we are going the right way. The first thing I want to talk about, other than this initial preamble, is in terms of what has happened over the last 1 year, is the people. So I think a lot of changes since I first joined, and one of the biggest things that I am looking back and thinking we have in place in which I am happy about is that we have a very vibrant and functioning leadership team. Okay, and that's very crucial because, like I said, a group of people is required, a group of experts is required to provide that leadership. So, I'm happy to note, and I'm sure you guys would have also noticed that, there is a robust, vibrant, functioning leadership team where I think I would say that people who report to me that comprise this leadership team are empowered to do what they want and how they want to run their teams. Okay, so that is something that has happened over the last 1 year, and I think this leadership team is very strong. I'm very happy that it is in place, and I have a lot of regard and respect for this team. Obviously, there have been changes. There have been some old leaders who are not there, in the company now, and there are some new leaders who have come in, and there has been some, flux that has been there. But that is normal in this world. It happens, and we have to deal with it, and we have to ensure that the fundamental core remains, and some of these changes are so-called, superficial, and we keep quickly regroup, quickly manage, and quickly take it forward. Right? So I think I'm very glad. The latest change, for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure a lot of you know, is that Raj has decided to leave. He has decided to move on. A little bit of a shock for me. Didn't expect that. He was settling in really well, and I was beginning to depend a lot on him. Now I'll have to figure out what to do. Okay, so which we are doing. We are working on various options, including grooming our existing people like Arpit, people like Shashank. Of course, Muntakim, he's the steadfast, glue. He's always there, and and also looking at how we can get the right people from outside. So I'll talk a little bit about that later. So one thing is the leadership team, and I'm really happy that that structure has come in place, and it's something that I'm confident that even beyond me, everything has a life. Everything, in the world we have shelf life. Similarly, as a leader in India, I'll have a shelf life. I'm very confident that this structure will continue much beyond me. So that's something that I'm very happy about. From a team perspective, I think we are all, we have seen some new members come in. We have seen some old members solidify themselves. The team is evolving. The team is getting a lot more vibrant. And I think from my angle, there are two elements that I have always insisted upon looking at when I'm looking at the team, at the EI team. And those two angles or those two aspects are utilization and productivity. Okay, and those two things are extremely crucial for any organization to have an effective team that is working and that is effective and efficient and effective, okay, in terms of their working. Utilization means that the team is each individual is doing his or her bit for the full time, at least 90 to 110%. The fluctuation will be there, but that level of utilization is always there. It's not like people are coming into the office, doing something for half their time, not doing something for half their time. That does not work in the long run. So that's one aspect. Productivity is where what we are doing is contributing to the organization. It is contributing to the value addition within what our individual scope of work is, what the team's scope of work is, and also what the holistic organization scope of work is. So if there is value being added at all three levels, that means productivity is very good, right? So those are two things that I keep looking at when I am working with your leaders, and reviewing and getting into some of the details that I get into. At the same time, we have also, from a team perspective, trying to ensure that we give people the flexibility of working. So we have put in place structures that help people manage their work time the way they want to, so that they can be well utilized and that they can be very productive. So to that extent, I lean a lot on my leadership team. First of all, one thing that we put in place is that the leadership team, can we are not imposing a time, office time on the leadership team. Okay, we are saying that you choose to work the way you work simply because leaders work practically all the time. You get up in the morning and you are thinking about your work, you are replying to emails, you are having phone calls, and you do that even before going to sleep. It goes through Saturday, it goes through Sunday, and so on and so forth. So if you are actually having a 2-hour meeting from say 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., then I don't expect that they should be in the office at 9 a.m. I have to give them that freedom and flexibility and to do and run their life the way they want to run it. And then the other thing that I have done is that they can decide what they want to do with their team. They have the power, if there is a specific team that is working in a different time or in a different mode, as long as those two elements are taken care of, which is utilization and productivity, the SBU leaders, the leadership team members have the right to decide how they want to regulate office time for their people. Okay, so and you please work with your SBU leaders to ensure that you are able to regulate your personal office time to ensure that you are both efficient and effective. So that's something that is evolving still a little bit, but I would say that at least at the leadership levels of the organizations, it's pretty much well set. It's a well-oiled machine that's running, only once in a while I get a little nervous when I don't get a response for 3-4 hours, and then I'm like, what's going on? But that happens very, very rarely. And I think over a period of time it will settle down across the organization also. Okay, and I encourage you to play your role. It's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. You should sit with your manager, work with your manager to ensure that your utilization and productivity levels are very, very high. We have had some attrition, and I've talked a little bit about it at the leadership level, but we have had attrition across. Some of it is regretted, some of it is non-regretted. Regretted attrition means when we lose people, that we don't want to lose, where we want to keep them. One of my favorite things is, I was saying yesterday also, if any of you or if any of us goes to our boss and says, I want to resign. If I go to my boss and say I want to resign, there are 3 ways my boss can react. The first way is that the boss gets into dialogue saying, what are you doing? Why did you get into this decision? How can I help you think through this? And then it settles down into an equilibrium where the boss says, okay, I understand. Life moves on. Can you please hand over properly? And so on and so forth. The second way is where the boss will actually heave a sigh of relief, which will be audible, and I will hear that, right? And that will be like, oh my God, thank you, you saved me a lot of bother, you saved me a lot of trouble. I was struggling and I didn't have the courage to fire you, but you made my life, humongously easy. So thank you very much, the sooner the better. And the third way is when the boss will say, what are you talking about? You must be joking, and then when he realizes that you're not joking, then he'll tell me, no, let's sit down, let's go for coffee, let's go for a lunch. I need to talk about this, right? And what can we do as an organization to help you change it, right? So obviously all of us want to be in that third bracket. And that third bracket, if somebody gets up and says, I'm leaving, that's an extremely regretted situation for the organization, right? So as a group, we should avoid regretted attrition. But at the same time, non-regretted attrition, one of the things that I have struggled with, even in EI, is, and not just in EI, it happens all the time, I've struggled with in all my organizations, okay, is that we actually keep people who should actually be non-regretted attrition, who should be leaving. We carry baggage and we burden ourselves, and we also make their life miserable. That also we should be conscious of. And if somebody is not fitting in for whatever reason, skill, attitude, mapping of individual and organization path and direction, I think it is better for both to find different ways. Because the person will flower somewhere else, and we mean well for every human being fundamentally. Okay, we don't want to unnecessarily mess around with people. That's the last thing that we want to do. So, if you're able to have that kind of a approach, and if you're able to ultimately ensure that people go out and do, I think since I have come in EI, a lot of people have gone. I have not heard of one case that have gone and are doing miserable. Okay, I think most people have gone and are doing better than what they are doing here. and we are doing better than what we were doing. So overall, I think that's an important element to keep in mind, right, as we grow the team. So I think that's the first element that I wanted to talk to you about. I think from a people perspective, I'm glad, I'm very proud to be part of this team. It's truly very one of the best things that has happened to me in my life. I'm glad that I left, the industry that I was very used to, and I had spent over 20 years in. And this is something which I will look back when I am, say, 80 years old and say that this was one move that I made, which I'm very, very happy about. Because I see a lot of people my age still stuck, in what they are doing for the last 25 years. I could have also been stuck, but I think looking back now, it's a fantastic move, and I think it grows me as an individual, as a person, and it's for a little bit of time, maybe it was a little, where I was a little shaky, where I was not a little nervous, but I think I can confidently say that I've gotten over that phase, and I'm glad that I'm here. So I'm very, very happy, and thank you all. I'm very proud to be part of this group. So it's awesome. The second thing I wanted to talk about is product. What's going on for the last 1 year, what we have been doing, because I believe, we are our be all end all is our products. What Sridhar and Sudhir and Venkat and the team along with them, I'm not going to take names because there are too many names, some of them who are not here with us, and they've created an amazing, unbelievable product platform for us, right? It's absolutely fantastic. As I go around, and get more and more familiar with a lot of competition, I find that a lot of people try to act and put on the, disguise of being as good as us, but in reality, they still have a long way to go to catch up. So it's an amazing product that we have, and that's the be all and all, like I said. So that's I would say, after people, I think that's the most crucial element as far as we are concerned. The only new approach that I've tried to bring in, and I think we have made tremendous progress in the last 1 year on that front, is how can we be a product organization that has a solution orientation, okay? Because we have to realize that we can't just say we have a product, keep it on a shelf, and people take it and use it and consume it and say, wow, you're awesome. I think in my life, I've seen it happen only once, and that's this company called Apple, where they say, I throw it at you and you will use it. There's actually obesity in the way Steve Jobs built that organization. And I mean, you can look up to him and respect and say, boss, you're great. But a lot of I've worked in product companies all my life, and I don't think that audacity is so simply. Maybe Steve Jobs just got lucky. Even Jack Welch, a lot of other guys, big people, personalities in the world have not been as lucky as Steve Jobs in that sense, right? So we have to understand that our products ultimately have to bring a solution to the customer. If our products do not solve something for the customer, then it's not going to be useful for the customer, right? So that solution orientation is something that we must bring in our day-to-day life as we go through our jobs. The best way I can, I think I spoke to a group, so I think it was in Bangalore, yes, I was saying that Mindspark, if we can have a group of children playing in a park, and one child says, hey, have you done this cool thing in Mindspark? And the other child says, what is Mindspark? And this child should say, what? You don't know Mindspark? Oh, you don't know this cool thing? Go check it out. I think that is what I mean by solution orientation. When a child who is our ultimate customer, and that's my dream, So I request all of you to enable this dream to happen. And that's my dream for Asset also. So Aarti, please don't give me that smile. So that's my dream for all products, right? So where children go and actually say that, hey, wow, this is cool, and you got to see, check this out. See, normally that happens in play. It does not happen in learning. But imagine, at least we should have audacious dreams. We may not be a Steve Jobs to be as audacious as him, but I believe that if we have such audacious dreams, we will be able to get very close to that, right? So, can a child look at what we do as a play? where they have fun doing it, where they actually have fun learning it. Doesn't everyone say that, if you're in an occupation that is also a hobby, that means you're having a great life. Similarly, for a child that is learning and having fun, it's the best student life that a child can have. Right? So I think that's my ultimate dream, where we can create that solution orientation. And we're also, even actively now, we are talking about how we can do some of that. For example, we are talking about how do we, move on from a project approach to a product solution approach. So how can we make our customers come to us and let it be a pull, rather than we trying to go to them and trying to trust or push our solutions or products actually, right? So those are things that we are talking about actively. There's a lot more work to be done. Now specifically, I think all of you know that we started the Mindspark Rewrite project a little after I joined. I think after we started it, August or something like that? July or August. I joined last March and we started that. I think that's going well. We are a little bit nervous about our deadlines, because we want the new Mindspark to reach children in the academic year of 2018. We are slightly nervous about that, but I'm sure that we'll come up to speed and deliver. But the project overall is going well. The main focus areas are, we are improving the way we do diagnosis. There is a section of the team, and feel free to talk to me, anyone from the team or otherwise, in terms of if I miss something, or you can interrupt me and add on to what I'm saying, or question. Okay. So the diagnostic module, we are trying to see how we can do it better, how we can get deeper into our pedagogical way of looking at things, and do a much better diagnosis than we do right now. We are looking at the engagement, how do we engage children so that we can actually achieve the dream that I talked about. That's the other element that we are talking about, we are working on. We have engaged an outside firm, an external firm, to do the UI UX, and there are two objects of the UI UX. One is to make it attractive to children, and the second is to make it maneuverable from an experience perspective. It shouldn't happen that whether it's a parent or a teacher or a child goes to a screen and then says, now what? Or hey, this doesn't make sense. Should I go back? And basically, they shouldn't get lost as they are going through the user experience of going through that. Right? So that's another focus area. And the fourth one, which we have, I would say, kind of just scratching the surface, but at least talking about it, which is my biggest passion, is prediction. I really want to get to a stage where we can predict the learning path of a child, and guide the child through that predictive path. So that's something that I would really love to do. But these are the elements of the Mindspark Rewrite that's going on as of now. Right? And Sudhir also is working on something which is a little bit of a secret to me. He has shared very, very high level insight, but I think in another 2 or 3 weeks, he's going to astound us a little bit. Maybe you can talk about it, or you do it when you do it. So yeah, that's another thing that we are working on. From an asset perspective, Nishal and I have been. Is Nishal back? I think he came back Monday night. We just recently made he's there. We recently got the asset revamp roadmap done. It looks very exciting. We've had people around the organization look at it. We have had great inputs from Sridhar and Sunil especially, and we are quite excited. But fundamentally, what we are trying to do is that we are trying to provide packaged assessment solutions to our customers. So we want to be able to go to our customers, or when customers approach us, tell them that you do assessments the way you want. Okay, you want to test a particular concept, please do so. You want to test a holistic understanding of a child, or you want to figure out whether a class is at their class grade level or not, you can do that. You want to do formative assessment, you can do that. You want to do summative assessment, you can do that. You want to do something, we invent a new term and say normative assessment, you can do that. You can do what you want. and we have that capability and the flexibility to help you choose and do assess the way you want to assess and make it in a friendly manner so that it is learning friendly and learning focused. I think most of our competitors from an assessment perspective are only assessment solution providers. All they do is tell whether a child is at a required level or not, right? But we are a company that will also tell that, but more important than that, we are using assessments to help the child learn, to help the child go through that traverse that learning path. And that is what clearly distinguishes us from anyone else in the industry. And that's a huge power that we have, right? So that the asset revamp will be in that area. Some of you will know that we have also set up a quote-unquote lab, I call it a lab, for machine learning and artificial intelligence, right? So I think the world is moving very fast, and these are tools and technologies that will help us evolve at a much faster rate, try out new things. For example, if we are doing diagnosis and we are actually saying that we will make it extremely customized for every child. For example, if you go to a doctor, the doctor will give you medicine that will treat your problem, okay? And if I have, for example, blood sugar, okay, or diabetes, like a lot of our parents have that, some of us may have a little bit of it, marginal or whatever. Every blood sugar or ability, a humongous amount of work has gone in, in terms of how to diagnose. And I think a lot of that has been powered by big data analysis. And the other things that I hear now, the latest breakthroughs in the medicine world. For example, if you have to fix a clot in your artery system, you don't need any invasion. Okay, you can actually through images you can exactly figure out or diagnose what the problem is, and through other different kinds of radiation, without touching the human body, you can actually dissolve the clot. Even one of the latest treatments for cancer that my father went through is not chemotherapy, is not surgery, but it is radiation. So without penetrating the body, you are able. All they do is they actually put a small gold necklace kind of a ball, they inject it into the body so that instead of so for example in my father's case, they have to target the what's it called? Anyway, whatever. So if you have to say, for example, do the stomach, the radiation doesn't go to some other organ. It has to go where it needs to go. That's all that they need to do. Other than that, it's all absolutely non-invasive. So that level, imagine, what has gone in. It's crazy, right? And if you can imagine 20 years down the line that we are able to say we are able to use similar phrases for a child's learning, and imagine AI powering that, So this is going to be an unbelievably fantastic journey, guys. So that's what we are talking about, and that's where we want to be. So it's going to be absolutely super, So that's so exciting, unbelievably exciting. And I think for us to do that, we should be very focused in modern technology. So we have this ML AI lab, and I think some of us are working on it, which is going to be absolutely awesome going forward. Then we are also working on improving the software engineering aspects. So it's not just pedagogy, and it's not just defining the feature set that a product has. I think the engine that runs it is software, and we have a great software team. I think we have done amazing work in the past, and we are improving it. We have done 2 levels of improvement. One was that over a period of time there was a little bit of quote-unquote lethargy or rust or a little bit of weakness that had come into the team. I think we were forced to take action in terms of getting some of the people off the bus, and I think I alluded to utilization, productivity, and how we should address those kind of issues. But I think we have done that. The other thing is, if we don't do that, oftentimes you will find that people who are working hard get more and more work. So the horse that runs faster is the one that will be made to run longer. Okay. So and the others are just sitting and watching. So we don't want to stress out the good employees. So we need to make sure that everyone is contributing and not getting burnt out either, right? So we took some action as far as the software development team is concerned, and then now we are trying to we have put in a core team. I think the people who are here today, it's great. I think we have the strength and we have whatever is required to make our engine running effectively. But then it's not enough. We need more people, right? So we are doing recruitment. Recruitment is not easy. So we are also talking to third-party companies to see that whether we can get resource augmentation done from some other organization, right? So that's another thing that we are doing. So we will strengthen this team. It's already on that path, and I'm very confident that we'll complete this very soon. We are also ensuring, as part of all these exercises, that anything that we do from a product perspective impacts all segments, of our student population. So I think for a little bit of time in between, we kind of ignored the government school children, or some of the work that we did was focused only for private schools. I think we are rectifying that. Going forward, whatever work we do will be for everyone, all kids. And like I said, we should adopt a solution approach rather than a project approach. So when any customer from any segment comes to us, we will have a solution for that customer. So that's where we are going. So whether it be from for our LSEP division, or for our Mindspark Schools division, or for I didn't mean Mindspark, I meant private schools division, or any other arena. Okay, so that's another aspect that we are doing. So I think I'm very confident that one of the things that Sridhar keeps saying is make our product stronger, make our solution stronger, and we everything else will take care of itself. And I think we are doing a lot of things on that front, and I'm confident that we will get better and better. And it's not about how good we are today; it's always about how good we are at getting better than what we are today. And that's our approach. Because if we get satisfied with how good we are today, you will soon find that either you are kind of stagnating, or somebody else has caught up and become much better than you. So that's something that we are addressing, and we will continue to address. The third aspect that I want to talk about, how much time have I spoken? Sorry? 30 minutes, so I have some more time. We have blocked 2 hours, but I was told it's 1 hour. Maybe we can go up to 1.5 hours or something. Okay? So the third thing I want to talk about is partnerships, and I think the first one is somebody should tell me why you guys are smiling. There was this huge group smile in Bangalore when I made that comment about time. I can read into it. Okay, I'll keep quiet. Okay, the third thing I want to talk about is partnerships. The first one, huge round of applause to Pranav, Sridhar, the Harvard case study that's come out recently. I think that is fantastic, right? We saw a recent news item where a company has said that they are the first tech company to ever get a case study in India. So I would say we are the first tech company to ever get a Harvard case study in India, or an education company to do that, and which is very, very commendable. And for people like JPAL and Harvard to stand up and recognize, I think that shows a lot in terms of our capabilities and potential. So that's a fantastic partnership. Hopefully more will come out of it. We are working on that. We also want to publicize that. We also want the world to know that this has happened, and it's pretty cool. Right? The other one is Xstep. I think that's a very vibrant partnership that we have. We struggle when we work with governments and when we work with foundations. We struggle with the fact that we are a profitable company. And the government likes to work with non-profits more than profits. But at the same time, I fundamentally believe that it will change, because for example, if you see how airports have improved in India, it's come through private partnership. If you see how roads have improved in India, has come through private partnership. If retail has become so vibrant now, it's because of the government allowing private players to become dominant players in the retail segment. As long as DCM was selling, I don't think retail was as popular. But nowadays it's like absolutely crazy, right? So even telecom, right? There was scam and there was all kinds of nonsense. But if private players had not come in, telecom would not be as vibrant as it is today. Right? So I think over a period of time, the government will realize that that's true for education also. But it may take a long time, so we cannot be waiting for that. The fact is that we are who we are, and we will work to ensure that we are building these partnerships that can capitalize on our strengths rather than waiting for some magic to happen. Right? So I think the partnerships like Xtep and the various foundations that we have had for a number of years will definitely help us going forward. One good thing about the Xtep thing is that we inked the partnership a few months before the government acknowledged them as a very front-running organization from an education reach perspective. The Xtep team has basically been the team that is behind Aadhaar, the BHIM app, and all these kind of things, right? And if you look at Aadhaar and all that, now we are talking about every Indian having a Aadhaar identity, and the BHIM app is essentially ensuring that any Indian who wants to spend money can do it, on a non-cash kind of a basis, right? So, that means reaching out to millions and millions. And Xtep is a platform that's developed by these people, saying that we will give access to millions of children, and we will be in their platform. So that's a great way of reaching out to multitude of people. We have signed a partnership with Ryan Baker. He is a professor with University of Urbana-Champaign in Chicago, and he used to be with Columbia University, and he's a very acknowledged figure in the field of machine learning, and I think that's he being in the lab is a great opportunity for us. Right? I also want to have a partnership with someone who has been there, done that. For example, we talked about medical imaging. Can we have someone who can tell us that, hey, this worked in that arena, it's likely to work in yours too. Or I don't think this can work in your arena because of these reasons. So that's something that we want to do. But this Ryan Baker partnership we are hoping will be really valuable for us. I briefly alluded to software development, IT, third-party augmentation resource. Like I said, we already did outsource or work. We are working with a partner for our UI UX for Mindspark. Later on, we want to do UI UX across all our products that's similar to Mindspark or gives the same look and feel as Mindspark does. Similarly, we are looking at resources, a company that can give us resources. So we are talking to 3 or 4 organizations, and hopefully we'll be able to find one of them suitable to our needs and pricing and everything that goes with it. Right? So that's as far as partnerships is concerned. So this is good. So it's a vibrant environment, and we are there. EI has a presence in the environment. So it's a good thing for EI, for people to know about EI and as an organization, and that the partnerships will establish that over a period of time. The last thing I wanted to talk about is culture. Okay, I won't spend too much time here. From a culture perspective, I would what is culture? Culture is something which reflects the identity of a group. Okay, the best way I can describe this is, and I did that with the new joinees when I addressed them a while back. Okay, and the best way I can describe is Infosys. There was a time when in Bangalore you would go to a public place and they'll say, that gang is Infosys. Okay, Infosys was not the only IT company. There was TCS was there was Wipro, but somehow Infosys had managed to develop that kind of an identity where a stranger would see a bunch of kids and say these are Infosys kids. So that's an amazing demonstration of culture that organization has developed. Over a period of time, it kind of disintegrated a little bit, but maybe they just grew too big to be able to do that. So imagine if you go out somewhere in a group of 6 or 7 and people say this is EI, that those guys must be from EI. That's a very powerful thing, right? So the point I want to make to you is when you are in a group, any group, whether it's a family, it's an organization, or a bunch of friends, see, culture will get formed. You have no control over it, okay? So whether you like it or not, you will find that that group is gaining a cultural identity with which others will associate that group, okay? So you have no control over it. It will happen. What you have control over is what kind of culture you want to happen, to grow. That we have enough control over. So unless we are aware, the first step of controlling anything is to be aware that we can control, and number two, to do something about it. See, one of my minor frustrations is that we kind of seem to ignore this element in our group. We don't care much about culture. So my request to you, all of you, is please be aware that whether we like it or not, the culture will get formed. There is an opportunity that we have to be able to influence it, to be able to control it. So please, why don't we do it? Why don't we do it in a positive way that will make us better in the long run? So that's something that we must do. And I think the guidelines for that are company principles. We have company principles, but I don't think any of us really care much about it. We have values, and I think it's important for us to be aware, important for us to change it if it doesn't suit us. But ultimately, this is what will help us. If we live by our principles and values, it will help us control the way the culture is formed. Okay? It's important to live by our principles and values. And I'm not saying you should mug up, rote learn company principles. Please look at the company principles and see how it is applicable to your day-to-day life, and just adapt and live it. If you do that, that's good enough. And I'm going to take help from marketing to at least catalyze that and help that happen in the organization. Two or three elements that I want to talk about this. I would love to see, we talked about team. I would love to see the team being very accountable in what they do. And one of the reasons I will share with you why I say that we don't care much about company principles is, in my last Inside EI, I mentioned that people tell me that they don't, I should talk something else, not just give like a boring update of what happened in the month. And I said, okay, from this month onwards, I'll talk something about culture. I'll start with accountability. And then next month, I just kept quiet. I didn't do anything. Guess how many people came to me and said, hey, what happened, Srini? You said that you started with accountability, and then this month you didn't write anything. 0. Okay? Seriously, 0. Which means either you never read it, or you read it and said, yes, it doesn't matter. But I'm telling you guys, culture will get formed. You might as well do something about it. Okay? So please do something about it, and company principles and values are vehicles that you can use to do something about it. Okay? So accountability is important. Not only should we be accountable to what we do, but we should also hold each other accountable. See, when we do that, you will find that one segment is not getting burnt out and other segment is having a good time. When that accountability is kind of 360 degrees. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about is collaboration. To me, at the extreme level, at its best, collaboration is my day job is to make others successful. If all of us work in a way that we make somebody else successful, that is collaboration. Okay? And guess why that is collaboration? Because if I do that to 10 people, at least 8 out of those 10 will do that to me. So it actually comes back multifold. Okay? So I think that's something that we all should think. To me, it is an EI weakness. We don't share. We kind of shield as if it's like Indo-Pakistan secret or something like that. There's nothing which is, cross-border secret thing here. Let's share, let's be open, so somebody asked me, Divya, can I record? I said, absolutely, record. I can record. I'm not doing any, UN meeting here which is highly confidential, war or something like that. You please record, because we want to share. We have to be, open with each other. So I think it's very important that we collaborate as a group, and make each other successful. So those are the, things that I wanted to talk to you about. So I think that's great. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I can't wait for the next Cheney Junction stop. So with that, any questions? So I think we have another 130 minutes or so. What is the timeline?
So, Cheney, why don't you take questions with 2 or 3 together?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Take 2 or 3 questions together so we can integrate.
Okay, so Pranav was saying we can take 2 or 3 questions together so that we can integrate a response. Yeah, I'm fine either way. So please do come up with questions. And that holds, the people on mute on WebEx, if they want to ask, how will they ask? Can you, maybe you can chat. Yeah, so those on WebEx who are kind of on mute, if you have a question, please send it on chat. It will come here. It will come here. If you send it on chat, it will show up on the screen. Yeah, I think, do you have a mic or something?
Yeah, I have a loud voice. So, since it is really good that we are looking at partnerships, I wanted to understand when we are having partnerships with IT companies from where we are augmenting resources, is our IP not at risk, or is the product which they are making for us, can they not go out and use in different form because they get the knowledge IP from us because we will be guiding them in making the product?
So Raghav's question was, for those of you who are not in the room here, that when it's good that we are having partnerships, but for example, we are talking about IT partnership in terms of software development, and what is the risk? What is the risk of our IP, being misused by these partners, as a worst case? So I think that's a great question. Thank you, Raghav. So 2-3 things. Number one, we have a very powerful, non-disclosure agreement and intellectual property protection agreement. We have a pretty strong and rigid one, and there's this guy sitting there with his hand on his nose who guards it like a fierce, gentleman named Mihir. He guards it very, very, very fiercely. So 2-3 things. Number one, all these agreements goes through a central point. I insist that Mihir must look at it, and if required, we also send it to Venkat. I have an understanding with Venkat where he feels that I have understood what his perspectives are, and he has said that if you need to, you or Mihir can approach me, which we do. Right? So that's number one. Number two is we try to find partners who are not going to even if they get into this field, it will take them years to. So one of the things that I talk about is existing competitors who are 3-4 years behind us, right? So for someone new to come in and get into our kind of level will take them a long time. They have to blatantly, go against the signed agreement for them to do that, which means they are legally liable. Normally organizations will not do that. And the other reason is that, the third reason is, we partner with organizations of repute that will not, unnecessarily go around messing with agreements. So, for example, in software, we are talking to companies like Ascendum, Mahindra, Tech Mahindra, and Genesis, which have a reputation to protect. The last thing they want to see is a court case in their name where it says that you have blatantly gone against IP agreements. Right? So we protect it legally. We protect it. Ultimately, I feel we have to protect it from our product strength capability. Even if there is somebody out there who is developing products, we have to stay ahead of them. That's what. See, one of the organizations that I used to be part of, a supply chain company called Manhattan Associates. Okay, there are two giants called Oracle and SAP that are ERP companies, and supply chain is very close to ERP. But for 20 years of its existence, this company has not, these giants have not been able to acquire this organization. For two reasons. One is because the organization has kept its product 4 to 5 years ahead of the competition product. And number two is because the company has financially kept itself in a place where it's very difficult to acquire the organization. And I think EI is similar, very similar in both respects. very difficult for anyone to acquire AI, very difficult, and also it's very difficult for someone to catch up from a product feature set. Any other questions? There is no chat till now.
So, would you be able to highlight maybe qualitatively how last year has been in terms of EI going?
Little bit louder, or come closer, no?
This mic is not.
If you have sent a chat and it's not visible here, send a text to.
Would you like to share in qualitative terms maybe how the year has been in EI in terms of financial, in terms of product improvements and maybe cultural aspects on these three domains?
Qualitative.
Maybe rating on scale 1 to 5, how do you see in these parameters, or meets expectation or exceeds expectation, whatever?
Come next one, right?
Yeah, maybe we can actually speak this to the WebEx people.
Would you like to share your feedback on EI's performance since last year in terms of financials, second in terms of cultural aspects, and third in terms of product improvements?
And you, the last one.
Introduce
Sorry?
yourself.
That's fine.
Yeah, Maulik, I raised these three questions and wanted to see, how leaders feel on those aspects, how they have fared, and there will be follow-up questions.
So number one, I think Maulik put me in a spot. Okay, for one simple reason that we are pretty much, quite critical when it comes to ourselves, right? That's one reason he has put me in a spot. So if I say 9 on 10, then I feel bad when I go home. And if I say 5 on 10, I feel, oh my God, what is my team going to think? So, you just kind of put me in a big quandary. Right? But that said, number one, you said product, product? Financials, product and culture. From a financials perspective, I would say, we saw last 2 to 3 years, we have been fairly flat. And we had done a lot of improvements and changes in terms of the structure this year. Starting with when Sudhir joined, the sales engine, completely revamping our approach, as also the design, the approach and the team from a sales perspective. And we said that it will take us about 2 to 3 years for all this to show up, right? So from that perspective, this year we will grow a little, and Mihir, please correct me, I think we will grow a little over 11% or so. And I would say from that perspective, I think it is good, it is healthy. Always, when a company undergoes big changes, the biggest risk is that the organization can go backwards. That can be that's one of the things that people have to be very, very cautious about. That the organization should not show negative growth or should not slide and so on and so forth. I am happy that we have consolidated and we have not gone down. We have actually shown a little bit better growth than we did in the last 2 years. So from that perspective, I would say very good financially. It is a great platform for us to get back growth, 20% and above. I can see a question in the chat here which relates to a challenge that we face, and I think there will be challenges, there will be environmental challenges, but I think we have set the platform to grow in this tough industry. So 8 on 10, 7.5 on 10. Okay. The next one is products. Right, in terms of so our endeavor has been to improve our products. I would like to answer this in 2 ways. Both from an assessment perspective and also Mindspark. We had not done anything major since the time the products were started as Ascent, in 2001 and Mindspark in 2006, 2007. Right. So from that perspective, we are doing big improvements. We are working on big improvements. The final proof is when the products get deployed on ground. Okay, Aarti keeps saying that, she keeps saying, I can't say we are doing great work till children start using it and it shows that we are doing great work, right? So that is when it will come. So it's a little premature to rank and rate, but in terms of the work that is going on, I would say, especially given the fact that we have not done anything like this in the history of the company, I think there's a lot of work that's happening from a product improvement perspective. I would still shy away from ranking because ultimate proof of the pudding is in the eating, right? So let's wait for it. The third one is culture. I think culturally, I would say we have a long way to go. I would probably rate us at about 5 or so. Let me again answer this question in 2 ways. See, fundamentally we have a strong culture. The good thing about EI is there are things in place which are quite fantastic actually. A lot of organizations struggle extremely hard to have what we have today from a culture perspective. The kind of pride that we have in our work, the kind of work ethic that our employees come into office with, or approach their work with, it is, I would say, 11 on 10. Okay, but I want to say that we are not as good as we are today. It's all about getting better than where we are today. Okay, from that perspective, I told you the 2-3 elements that I want us to focus on: accountability, collaboration, from that perspective. But the other aspects that I said, we are way there, and I have seen organizations that struggle extremely hard on those aspects. So that's the answer to your question.
So, should be based on the inside AI reading on accountability as well. Can you put in a little more concrete terms as to how we can aspire or what changes we can do to improve on these two aspects, being accountability and collaborative? Collaborative is now, it's still easy to understand and work towards, because we have shared, it's making others successful, be it outside and within the team and outside the team as well. So it's easily doable and we know what it takes to do. In terms of accountability, can you show us what the concrete way in how each and every one of us can work towards improvement?
Tough question, right? Because actually even collaboration and accountability, all these are very specific to a circumstance, specific to a, some of you who have seen my presentation on accountability, I would love to come and present to you on this. There's actually a model on accountability, and it's specific to situation. Okay, it will take me time. I would love to share the accountability loop with you. If everyone agrees that it is a good thing for us as an organization to focus on, because I don't want to impose my thought on everyone. Right? If you all agree that is the case, then I would actually say that marketing should have a couple of posts. I should do a presentation on accountability. It will take me at least an hour, and we should have the accountability loop put in place. I have this personal example of mine that I walked through, which taught me how to be more accountable. But it's too short a time for me to answer that. So can we take that as an action item? Pakka. My what?
She says it.
Yeah. Please, she chases like, she's very good at it. She says, karna hai, to karwagi, bas that's it. Is that okay, Maulik?
Yes, thanks, Srini.
Okay, I'm gonna, I've got a question, I don't know from who. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is from Anita. The question is, how do you see the government regulating the participation of private organizations like ours in schools, especially when making our products mandatory? Okay, another very good question. I would also, one of the questions that I had noted down to talk about in case it doesn't come up is, government is already regulating, school fees and so on and so forth. So they are not yet regulating organizations like us but they are regulating schools, private schools. Okay, we have seen that in Gujarat. We are seeing, it looks like there will be something in UP. There was something in Tamil Nadu a few years back, and so on and so forth. So government is doing that already. So how do we? So the question here is, how do you see government regulating? See, there is a general perception in the government that education should be a service. Okay, I think this perception was there a few years ago as far as education at the higher level was concerned. You know, management level, post-grad level, and so on and so forth. I don't think it has gone very well where it demonstrates that that approach is successful. It's not been successful. There were attempts to regulate fees, but it didn't really see light of the day. On the contrary, there was more fees increased and other kind of funding that was done at that level in those organizations, right? So, frankly, these are things that we don't know how it will shape up in the future. These are challenges of working and of doing business in the environment, but how exactly it will shape up is something we all cannot really predict. But what we can definitely do, though we cannot predict, is prepare ourselves to be equipped enough to respond in an adequate manner, however it shapes up, right? So to that extent, what we need to do is we need to imagine certain scenarios and prepare ourselves for that, number one. Number two, we need to prepare ourselves robustly that whatever may be the scenario we are able to manage that and work with that, right? So number one is we need to strengthen our solutions and our product. Number two is we need to work in partnership with schools. I talk about partnerships, our biggest and best partners are schools, and they have been from day one of our existence, okay? So we have to, when the government starts regulating, starting with schools, we have to be that partner to them, where we are with them and we are seen as with them. We have to keep lobbying, we have to keep telling the government, and we have to keep showing the other side. I talked about other private enterprise which has in partnership with government has delivered quality service to Indians, So, we have to keep educating the government through lobbying and through, reaching out to them in other manner on these aspects of how we can actually, through the quality that we bring in, help education much better than regulation can ever bring, right? So that's something that we can do. And finally, we need to reach out to parents. We need to reach out to children. If you achieve my dream, help me achieve my dream of, the child and telling the other child in the park, or a parent going to a school and saying, we want to have Mindspark. I think that is the ultimate power that will come to us, right? So we would like parents to go to schools and say, we want Mindspark, rather than parents saying, you cannot increase fees or whatever. I do believe that schools need to be checked a little bit. Sometimes, some schools, not all schools, but some schools, what they tend to end up doing is they just charge all kinds of fees, markups, they'll have school uniform and have a 50% markup or 100% markup. They'll have some other products like tech products and have markups. Then they will have one product for 2 years, trash it, get something else. So it's some schools do it in a very unscientific manner, which is entirely focused towards growing their business. And maybe that is what is when you start policing the one thief, the society has to suffer, right? So maybe that is what is happening now, and hopefully the policing will also help in that manner, because when the one thief goes away, society comes back to routine and comes back to man, right? So even that will have a little bit of a positive effect. But I think we need to do this. We need to make our product stronger. We need to lobby and influence the government to see the strength of technology and the influence it has on learning, and we need to reach out to our customer, that is the child and the parent, and make them ask for our product. If we do that well, I think we will be fine in both these aspects, whether the government regulates schools or whether the government regulates us. Sudeep, do you want to add anything to this?
So we had a conversation yesterday with a very senior, was the Education Secretary of Gujarat, and he also was the Chief Secretary. and we were asking him, what were his views. He also shared that we need to be able to create public opinion to challenge this government to move to regulate the fees or regulate the education institutions. So I see our role also to ensure that the view from parents who are happy with the schools also gets put onto social media or onto platforms where the government doesn't assume that there is only one view where the parents are feeling cheated. And there is a significant other view which may be even larger, that schools are delivering value. And if that view is not shared, what may happen is that the regulation may kill innovation and may kill the move towards quality, which may impact us. So I think that was a big takeaway from our side. So we will need to invest a fair amount of time, energy, effort in collaborating with different organizations to bring this view to the fore.
Thank you. Any other question? Anyone in Bangalore?
Yeah. I have a question regarding software development team, right? Okay, sure.
You can introduce the name.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, this is Dipen. I just joined software development 1 month ago. And I have a question, we did restructuring and all recently, right? So I just want to know, in our software development team, being from product-based company also from our past, I can see that there are teams like technical support, or there are teams like business analyst team. So basically, a developer is the person who just does the development. There are things like supporting other teams. There are things like analyzing the requirements and creating documents. So I can't see that type of teams in the software development. We have a generic software development team. A developer is doing everything. So basically, if I have something development and somebody comes from other team and he asks me to check and there are issues. So basically, our life cycle of development gets delayed every time it happens. So basically, I just want to know that are we doing hierarchy, deep into the hierarchy in the structural way of software development? That is my basic question, because right now I can't see similar structure right now, because in my previous company where I have seen everywhere there were different technical support teams, there were different business development teams. So basically they were creating all the interfaces, wireframes and everything, and then the developer was given the complete requirements. They were just to create technical documents and do the development, and the support team will have to hand over it to test team, and then test team hand over it to technical support team. So for any other further issues, technical support team is the one first takes the issue, then it comes to tester, and then it comes to a developer. So basically developer is the third line of support, and here I can see that everything is with developer. So my concerns and
Thank you. So thank you. That's also a great question. But let me tell you, that's a question that I've probably answered a million times.
even I was I think I was not there then.
Yeah, no, I've not answered that question a million times here. I think the first time I'll answer that question here. But this in my life, in my 25 years or 22 years in the software industry, I've answered this question a million times. So, oh my God, I'm going to a lecture. The software industry has evolved in the way that you are talking about. Okay, and I think the reason it has evolved in the way you are talking about is because organizations have grown. When the company grows beyond the size, that is when you start classifying. Okay, when a family is say 3 members, then everybody does everything. But when a family becomes 10 members, then you say, "Acha, तुम्हारा task है घर को साफ रखना, तुम्हारा task है दरवाजा lock करना, तुम्हारा task." So as the team grows, you start classifying. As the software industry grew at breakneck speed, and unbelievably crazy numbers, then it started classifying. Okay, but originally software development, everybody did everything, and the best quality comes when everyone does everything. When you start classifying and redistributing work, it does, when checkpoints are put in place, quality suffers. Okay, the fewer the checkpoints, the better the quality. You know, so in fact, I experimented this in my last organization. What I did was this. Okay, I completely changed the mode of working, in which what I did was we were doing one product, and that product had a customer segment for which it was to be deployed. I said that the team that developed the product will deploy, will execute, will implement, will support, and will be responsible for the entire cycle. And guess what? The fact is that in 85 years of the history of that company was 85 years old, you know, before we sold it. We sold it when it was 88 years old. But in the 85-year history of the company, that project was the most successful, you know.
For development it's okay, like, but for technical support at least we need a team which actually supports, and the development it should be different. So that's
so that said,
Yeah.
that whatever I said, that said, you know, as we grow and as the business grows to proportions where one of the things I acknowledge when I talk about software team is we need more people. Now, when we get those more people, if it makes logical sense to classify, if Muntakim, Arpit, Shashank, all these guys feel that we need to classify, then we need to do it now. If we feel that we don't need to classify and we need to classify, you know, I feel that 30, 40, 50 member software team, you know, is not a big size. You know, I have run software teams that are, you know, 1400 people, you know, 16 product teams, right? So, उस scale पे जो है, it becomes more a necessity. Whereas in this scale, it's our choice. If we want to do it, we can do it. If we don't want to do it, we don't have to do it. So it's a decision that we can take as we are working. You know, that's the best answer that I can give.
Thank you.
No, you have to unmute. Can't hear you, Priyanka.
You have to understand.
1 second, you have to be unmuted on WebEx. Hold on a second. Just send a chat, Priyanka. Yeah, you're good. You can speak now.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
So my question is regarding the CSR. So what are we doing regarding the CSR of TI? Are there any initiatives planned in the future? Because before you joined, we were all sent out a form asking for some members to be a part of the CSR team and all that. But we haven't heard anything after that. So I just wanted to know if there's anything already happening parallelly, and what are the plans in the coming years for CSR?
Okay, thank you. And Mihir, you can add to my answer if you think it's so, because I'm not much up to speed in that area. So yes, we need to not only we believe in doing CSR, we also now you know, as regulation are required to do CSR. Right? All companies are. So there is some discussion going on, you know, between Mihir and I at a very high level. We've just had one email exchange in terms of what our plans from a CSR perspective needs to be. And what is our CSR budget?
It is some 15 to 20 lakhs, but it is something like it is not a mandatory thing to do. It is like it is our hard-earned money. So what we will always like to ensure that we are getting into the right. See, there are always.
Where do you want to come?
You'll have to repeat. So Mihir is adding in.
Hi. So just from financial side and from regulatory perspective, two things I would like to mention. So the regulation related to CSR when it was introduced a few years back, it is the spirit which is more important rather than just a form. For the sake of donation, if we are making a donation and then we don't know where that money is really going and how it is being spent, then we would really not like to just for the namesake as a donation. Now, when it comes to CSR, the policy says, the broader framework says there are few heads, broader heads related to health, education, like upliftment of the underprivileged people. So one of the heads or combination thereof we can choose. So we can spend in those spend for those not a mandatory thing. One another side of the whole thing is that in LSCP side, what we are also seeing that we are affecting or we are impacting the lives of like several underprivileged kids and their learning. So, but technically it is not being qualified as any CSR initiative. So though we are doing or we are affecting, we are falling within the broader definitions of that, but we being a profit-making company is not qualified for the CSR thing. Having said so, it is being mandated by law, though it is recommendatory in nature. Our intent is to do that, and Shini has suggested few areas, and we'll explore those.
So we are, yeah, like I said, very high level in terms of exploring. You know, one of the things I keep thinking is, should we do CSR like as in supporting other organizations, or should we just do in the area, in our area? You know, maybe we should just open a Mindspark center. You know, I don't know. So don't have a very good answer for you, but we are just beginning to talk about it in terms of what we need to do, and we'll come up with a proper plan in due course.
So, this is Pearson has a foundation, Pearson Foundation. There are many EdTech companies which are running their own foundation, right? And we are facing this challenge of being a private limited company and not able to get funds from huge funds available in the country for education. Can we have a foundation which is a EI foundation or a Mindspark foundation or something like that, which we can run and do for the government schools, right? So in that, the funds can come, so that vehicle would be there, which is a not-for-profit.
So the Raghav's question is, you know, can like Pearson is a company and has a Pearson Foundation. You know, can we have a foundation that is focused on quote unquote work at an underprivileged level, which is not for profit? Now, I believe, I don't know Pearson's case specifically, Raghav, maybe you can educate us better there, but I believe there are challenges to have a profitable organization that is in one arena like education, and at the same time, you know, have a social organization in the same area. So there are conflicts of interest that come up. If there is private money, for example, you know, Bill Gates has his money and he invests in Bill Gates Foundation and in you know, Bill Gates as a Microsoft as a company, he is giving money, right? If EI gives money, then that's a different. I don't think we are anywhere in that situation. There are a lot of other avenues that if EI had money that we will choose to give to. You know, so we won't yet do that. But if we you know, if we need to set up a quote-unquote foundation, either somebody has to contribute to that foundation, some other moneyed body has to contribute to that foundation, in which case, because we are profitable company in the same area, there comes a conflict, right? So, I don't think we can do that. We are still looking and examining various ways to do it. But ultimately, I think the best thing for companies like us is to make the government come to us. You know, it may take time, but we have to be steadfast. We have to be clear that this is what we do and this is what we will do, and that you know, the environment will change when people acknowledge and they start coming to us. That's what at this point in time we believe. One more question on the chat. I don't see any other question. No, I don't see any other question on that. Anyone else?
So, here is a question from Prakhar. His tag is not on. So the question is, with dealers are in the USA, now there will be resource allocation for a different market. Will it be a stretch for the organization, or will it be a cumulative benefit? For a product like Google Map, it will be more or less same usage or application, but for educational product, there will be more customization, I presume. Does an education organization get into a stage where they decide which market to focus on. The question comes with my sets of assumption, my
Net is not working.
yeah, my sets of assumption.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Prakhar. So basically there are two reasons why we are trying to grow our business in the US. Now, even before we knew that Sridhar is going to the US, actually when I joined the company, I didn't know that Sridhar is going to move to the US. Okay, that decision came after I joined EI. And before I joined the company, one of the things I just came back from the US. I was living there for the last 5 to 6 years, and I thought, my God, I mean, this is our products are so fantastic, and they have more than anything else. The thought that was in my mind was our solutions, our products will be quote unquote respected in the US. There will be a lot of respect-based demand in the US. And I asked Sridhar, why are we not looking at growing internationally, and only at Indian schools in Dubai or Singapore and so on, right? That was one. That was the background. One of the things that we need to do is we need to quote unquote internationalize our products. So whether internationalize means as something as simple as replacing Ashok with John, or replacing rupee with dollars, or a little bit more complicated where the way we ask the question, curriculum alignment, and so on and so forth, right? So that's one effort. I'm also alluding to your question about will we stretch ourselves thin, right? So there is product development effort in that respect. Then there is also setting up a market based effort. Now it happened that Sridhar went to the US. He didn't go there to set up the US office. He went there for his personal reason, and which was a medical reason. And then we said as soon as there was some breathing space, for him, we all know Sridhar, that guy will work, forever, right? And he started thinking, what can we do there, right? So that is what helped us start our US operations. So we are also finding that not only in terms of product improvements that I talked about, even from a market penetration perspective is not that easy, because there are what is called entry barriers that every market has for different solutions. Okay, so we are facing those quote unquote entry barriers, and we are doing work in terms of making our product. So when we talk about Mindspark rewrite, when we talk about assessment revamp, part of that includes internationalization, right? And when we talk about doing a robust software platform as part of the rewrite, we are saying that internationalization will be a lot easier. So day after tomorrow, if we decide to go to China, then it will be a lot easier to change some of these things that I talked about, right? As we are doing this rewrite. So we are equipping ourselves from a stretching ourselves thin perspective. I don't believe we will do that. We will handle it within the scope of our capabilities. From a market challenge and penetration and acceptance perspective, we'll have to keep responding and reacting to reality as we, as it unfolds in front of us. Okay. Yeah. Any other question? Okay, thank you. So, so Pranav is
I just wanted to thank a couple of people for putting together EI's first company-wide call on WebEx. First of all, I think Divya here, who has been relentlessly sort of working on this, and I'm not kidding, it took her 1 full week just to ensure that this call happens where everybody can listen, there's no background disturbance, people know what to do, people know how to log in. How many people do we have on WebEx? Did you count?
So 13 people signed up for it.
Right.
I think we have about 8.
Right. So we've had at least 8 different connections. We've been able to ask questions through chat and everything. So thank you to Divya and Bhavish from admin for supporting this as well. Thanks to both of you.
second is
is, I also want to let everyone know that the WebEx is available to anyone for using. So please use it for your team meetings. It's a good way to get people from different parts on video. You can share presentations, you can share a whiteboard, you can draw on a whiteboard, you can share files. I know the sales team has been using it very actively. The LSCP team has just started as well, but literally anybody can use it. Couple of good things are that even if you don't have internet, you can attend via call. And when you have internet, it separates the voice and the video. So even if you have low quality internet, the voice is still strong enough because you are able to use the phone line, right? The call-in feature. So it's a facility we've created to improve productivity, as Srini had mentioned. So feel free to use it, especially if you have distributed teams working across the country. That's it.
Okay, so no other questions, I'll hand over to Divya. Okay, yeah, thank you all. Thank you for coming to this meeting, and look forward to the next interaction in EI Express. Thank you all.
Yes, sir.